Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. The last month of Black Ops 4 Zombies has been completely dominated by the crashes, the awful communication from Treyarch, the lack of callings, the lack of factions, the bugs, the blue screens, the leaks, just everything. It's been an absolute mess. But the one thing that I can say amongst all of that I'm super satisfied with in Black Ops 4 Zombies is the Ether story. I think the Ether story is in a really good place right now. One of the best it's actually ever been in, because there are a lot of things that they've done that aren't necessarily the most obvious kind of broad strokes in the storyline. They aren't the kind of impactful narrative beats like the characters going to a new map or killing off a certain person. I'm not talking about those, but rather there are certain things in there that are smaller threads that they've started playing with that I think are just really enjoyable. And one of them is what we're going to be talking about today, because Monty seemingly has been placed into a part of the story where we have never seen him before. Ever. And it's really weird. So I want to first of all, before we dive into any more of this, we jive in today, I want to give a shout out to Rich Killer and Coldstone the Gamer, because those two together solved the cipher from Classified that we're going to be talking about as the fundamental kind of basis of this video. So huge salute to them. Fantastic job, guys. We wouldn't know this story information if you guys weren't working on these things. So as I always say, big thank you to the Cypher kind of community, and especially to you guys for solving this particular one. So, what I'm going to do in the video is I'm going to read the Cypher in full, and then I'm going to pick apart the reasons why I think it's just a bit odd. It's just a little bit strange. It doesn't quite fit with what I would have expected it to say, and I think it's worth talking about. August 8th, 1947. I've been logging materials acquired from Group 935 for some days now. Major Sawyer has asked me to evaluate files pertaining to undead experimentation. This afternoon, I happened upon an old friend. Hidden deep away in storage was Dr. Maxis's original matter transference prototype. Apparently, it was one of the items the Americans acquired when splitting Group 935's resources with the Russians. Caveat here, just from me, that's something that we learn about a little bit more in Classified itself, so that's what he's referring to. Unsurprisingly, it's in a terrible state of disrepair. Missing pieces, badly damaged, completely non-operational. To be fair, Maxis himself stopped using it after the failure of those initial tests in 1939. While useless in its current state, it will provide great reference when we begin teleporter development at this facility. One thing I'd never noticed before. Scratched into the bottom of the machine was a message. For M, who started me on this journey. It struck me as odd. I can't recall anyone at Group 935 who went by that initial. I haven't the faintest idea who Maxis could have been referring to. And the cipher is signed off by Schuster. Now then, that is a little bit of a head scratcher, or even a chin scratcher if you will, because M, we would assume right off the bat to be Dr. Monty. M was first mentioned way back at the beginning of Black Ops 3. In fact, there were ciphers on Shadows of Evil, one that I think I might have actually solved, or if I didn't solve it, I at least made like a big explanation video on it, which said that M is interested in these worthless beings, all his work will be undone. And then we had others, and I think they even extended over further to Darizon, saying, I have received another toy posted by M, and things along those lines. There's even a Zetsubo cipher that says, I fear there is something M isn't telling me, and that there is not much time left for us. Ominous. We've also, aside from ciphers, had mentions of M in-game. I mean, the most obvious example would be the M on an envelope that you see in the reporter's hand in Shadows of Evil, and we learn from the timeline exactly what went down there. Richtofen kills that reporter in self-defense. It's basically a whole charade because the summoning key is the most important artifact in not just this but any universe, etc., and they're kind of fighting for it back and forth a little bit. So M, for the first half of Black Ops 3, was a little bit of a mystery, but we basically ended up coming to the conclusion that it was Monty, and then the timeline confirmed it 100%, no doubt in our minds. Monty, M, one and the same. But then we read this message from Black Ops 4. This is not a Black Ops 3 message. And we have mention of M again. And it's peculiar because as Black Ops 3 went on, we started to get less and less M and more Monty, because it wasn't a mystery anymore. And now that we know who M is, it's peculiar that he's still being referred to as M here, rather than just for Monty, who started me on this journey. That, however, could, if you like, be easily explained by just Maxis wanting to keep Monty's name secret for whatever reason, and so he decided to write M instead of Monty. Fine. In that case, let's move on to what's, in my opinion, even weirder about all of this. Why would Maxis sit down and gift or dedicate a matter transference prototype kind of shell, because that's what it's actually inscribed on in the classified map? Why would he write that on that piece of machinery in the first place? Just why would he do that? And why would he say, for M, who started me on this journey, when Monty didn't start him on that journey? It's just bizarre that we would have that universe's Maxis saying that Monty was the one to kickstart things, when we only hear of Monty first stepping in a couple of places in the timeline, a couple related to Kino, and then a couple related to Origins, but none of them really say anything about Monty giving Maxis like an impetus to join Group 935, for example. And Maxis has clearly been part of Group 935 in the message here, because they're logging materials acquired from Group 935, and Schuster is talking about his time in 935 in 1939. I mean, we can read the timeline and it just doesn't really fit. You've got the Origins entry. Monty brings Maxis's brain to the house just after he decides to step in because Maxis's brain arrives in Agartha, so that's very much Origins. And then Monty also feeling obligated to step in around Kino der Toten, and that's when he begins to make changes in the background with Group 935 inventing the perk machines, etc. But that's October 28th, 1963. Now, sure, he could be dipping back into time, but if he's feeling obligated to step back in and he's stepping in at the point in time where Group 935 is already established, then surely Monty isn't the one starting Maxis on his journey. I feel like the only point in time where it would really make sense for Maxis to be saying, here's a kind of shrine, if you like, to M, who started me on this journey, would be the Maxis in the house who goes there post-Origins, who then learns of all of the stuff that he needs to do with Richtofen from Monty when he gets that knock at the door, with all of that information that we learn in Zetsubo no Shima. But that doesn't make sense here. It just doesn't fit, because why would the Maxis in the house have written this on a telepad or a teleshell and then have that shell end up in classified? Like, that just does not fit. So, unless I'm being a complete plum, which is possible because at this point, you can be a plum very easily when you're trying to make any kind of decision about the zombie storyline, because there's always someone waiting in the wings to go, actually, this message in the timeline says otherwise. Like, you can't get around that, and that's why I kind of feel like the timeline almost spoils the fun a little bit about the way that we used to theorize about the story, but that's a topic for another video. I feel, just as my gut reaction, as my initial thought, that this message is odd. It's odd to me that the classified universe would have this shell with a message that Maxis would have written on it for Dr. Monty. I mean, let's even look at the Black Ops 4 maps and their references to Monty. We have reference to Monty at the end of Blood of the Dead, because at that point, Great War Richtofen has come and introduced Monty into that part of the arc, and it's only because of him that they start talking about it. And then in Classified, which we're saying is post-Blood, that crew have had a little bit of time to chat about it a bit more, and that's why they talk about the Great War, etc. And so that makes sense why in the Classified ending, Monty's involved too. But if you look at the Blood of the Dead map itself, pre-ending, and you look at the Classified map itself, pre-ending, neither of them have any kind of importance placed on Monty whatsoever. Because think about it. Monty really jumped into our lives and introduced himself to Primus for the first time in Gorod Krovi. And in Blood of the Dead, Grodd is yet to happen. So Monty hasn't introduced himself to that crew. And then on the other side of things with Classified, it's classified. Monty has no involvement anyway. So just from the kind of story positioning point of view, Monty is already much further in the background than he was in Black Ops 3. And on top of that, he's got no gobblegums in the maps. They've completely removed that. So they've really pulled Monty out of the experience. And yet, we get a mention of Monty, pretty much at least, by name, in Classified, in this cipher, on this telly thing, which just makes no... Why? They didn't start you on the journey. I mean, like, I get if you were dedicating the telly thing to him, if Monty had talked to Maxis and actually had a conversation with him around the time that they were developing the perk machines or something along those lines, but for him to be saying that he was started on the journey by Monty, I just think it's weird, man. I just think it's a bit strange. And it makes me kind of want to start spinning up a load of crazy other ideas about all sorts of weirdness related to Monty himself as a character. This is the thing, right? Monty has been seen as a quote-unquote, at least, good guy for a long time. And in Black Ops 4, we finally learn the truth. Monty's evil, we've got to fight against him in this great war. That's going to be the culmination of our entire story. Okay, fair enough, that sounds like a pretty sort of straightforward trope for Treyarch to kind of drop on our plates. The good guy is actually the bad guy. Not a big deal. But it's the nuance of that ends up making this really, really strange. We have Monty dabbling throughout the entirety of the stories, as he said, influencing the perk machines, giving us the mystery box, blah, 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 blah. But we also have this strange relationship that he has with the Shadow Man. Remember the quote about the worm from, I think it was Revelations, might have been Grodd? Do you remember the Shadow Man telling you exactly what Monty was going to do and being correct about it, no less, in the Revelations ending, saying that he was going to wipe you from existence? The Shadow Man specifically says, I'll happily be the only one to tell you the truth. You're gonna fade away. No one's going to remember you. That's going to be it. You're going to just be wiped out. Like, the Shadow Man has been pushing there to tell us the truth, but then simultaneously telling us that Richtofen used to work with him as his apprentice, and all sorts of other stuff that we completely don't understand. I don't know, man. I think that there is some seriously fishy business going on, and I think that at this point, it would not surprise me if Treyarch just said, hey, you know what? Why not just chuck in a second Monty? Monty 2. And Monty 2 is bad, and Monty 1 is good. And that's the two halves of the worm, and then one of them dies, and first there were two, and then the two killed the one, and then there was one. All of these quotes that we've had over the years have got to be going somewhere, right? And if there was like another Monty, and then that Monty ended up being the Monty that was involved here, and we hadn't heard about that Monty yet because he hadn't connected with Richtofen, who had read the Chronorium and then basically created the timeline at that point in time, but that Monty was one that was then going to communicate later potentially with Nikolai when he read the timeline in Blood of the Dead, and then communicate also with the other Richtofen, the young Richtofen, who then exits the portal in the Blood intro, and we don't know what he does afterwards. Maybe that's kind of the direction they're going in. But that sounds really far-fetched, right? Like, that sounds like complete nonsense. But at this point, I sort of think that's the kind of thing that Treyarch might be capable of doing. Maybe it's not going to be Monty. Maybe it'll be Mother Russia. Maybe it'll be Masaki. I don't know, right? But I just feel like Treyarch is going to pull some kind of weird, screwy maneuver here and introduce someone in a place in the story where they shouldn't be in order to make this sort of thing click and feel really satisfying. And whether that's just them doing it with Monty himself, and there's another Monty arc that we don't understand, or if there's two Montys, like a dark and a light Monty, or if there's some other business entirely going on, whatever is happening here, I think this cipher is just strange. And I would love if you guys could chuck some theories in the comments down below with why you think it's actually not strange and MrRoflWaffles is an idiot because there's some obvious story point that I'm clearly missing. I would love for you to go ahead and do that, but right now, I think that if you sit down and you think about your theory a little bit, you might find that it actually is a little unstable no matter what angle you approach it from, or at least that's my current understanding. But I could be wrong. as I've said. So, I'd just like to quickly say, I'll be trying to make more story videos in the next couple of weeks, but it's actually kind of hard right now because I'm really demotivated to make zombies videos because the game is in such a state, and Treyarch just aren't communicating really still, despite the fact that they said that they would. It's really a bit of a mess, and it's just making me want to play other stuff, so you're probably going to see some other games mixed in, because that's what I'm actually enjoying right now, but I will do my best to keep the zombie story content coming as I do so. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I'm MrRoflWaffles. See you next time. Bye for now.